大家好，歡迎嚟到我哋中倫倫敦小貼士。我係中倫倫敦律師樓嘅資深律師 Cherry 黃律師。咁我哋收到好多關於香港買家喺英國投資或者買樓自住會涉及嘅稅務問題。咁今日好榮幸，我哋可以邀請到我哋律師樓常駐香港嘅黎律師同埋 Omara Grutter 嘅註冊會計師 Mark 同大家解答一下。咁而家我哋將時間交俾黎律師同
Mark。Hello， 大家好，我係黎律師 Scholar。咁我咧就係英國 register 嘅律師，不過我係長住喺香港嘅。咁咧根據我喺香港嘅呢一年啦，咁我哋收到好多香港買家嘅 common tax questions 啦。其實除咗好多買家都會想買英國嘅物業啦，作為呢個 investment property 啦，其實咧有好多買家暫時都係好想知道，譬如有機會會移居英國嘅，咁佢哋咧就會想知道其實移居英國有啲乜嘢特別嘅稅務問題需要注意咧。咁如果佢係要移民去英國嘅話咧，其實 involve 嘅 tax issues 咧就會多好多噶啦。譬如佢哋想知道嘅嘢就會關於呢個 estate planning 嘅問題啦，同埋可能關於遺產稅嘅問題。咁今日咧，我同阿 Mark 咧就會解答一下逐一解答一下我哋客戶嘅疑問嘅。咁 Let's welcome Mark.
Hi everyone. So to introduce myself, my name's Mark Jovanovic and I'm a chartered tax advisor in the UK. I've worked in tax for a number of years now and I tend to specialise in personal tax, property tax, stamp duty, land tax, inheritance tax, and I deal with a lot of UK residents and non-UK residents. And it's not just me, there's a team of us of chartered tax advisors and accountants. So between us, we're able to provide a complete tax and accounting advisory service for you.
咁香港嘅買家咧，如果話想移民英國嘅話咧，就會想知道其實咁我哋係應該要俾香港嘅稅啊，定係俾英國嘅稅？咁而家咧，阿 Mark 就會幫我哋解答一下關於譬如喺英國嘅 property 嘅稅係應該點樣去計嘅。咁第一個問題啦，我哋 The first question would be, do I need to pay tax in property? For example, capital gains tax, income tax, or inheritance tax if I do not live in the UK? So if I live in Hong Kong, do I still have to pay UK tax?
Okay, so it probably makes sense if we address each of these taxes separately. So income tax and capital gains tax have their own statutory residency tests to identify whether an individual is classed as a UK tax resident or not for the year. So UK tax residents are basically liable to income tax and capital gains tax on their worldwide income and gains, whilst non-UK residents are generally only liable to their income and gains arising in the UK. Now, the statutory residency test is quite complex, so we won't go through all the details of that today. But looking at income tax, this will be payable if you receive income from renting your UK properties. You'll be liable to UK income tax on your profit from those for the year. With capital gains tax, this would also be payable if you were to sell your UK properties. For non-UK residents, there's some quite complicated rules for how the gain is calculated, where the properties have been held since before April 2015. So, and finally, inheritance tax. It's not your tax residency status that's important here, it's what's known as your domicile. And this dictates how much of your estate is liable to inheritance tax. So, as I briefly sort of touched on there, domicile is different to tax residency. And it's generally hard to change your domicile unless you're a tax resident in the UK for 15 of the last 20 years. So if you are UK domicile, you'll be liable to UK inheritance tax on your worldwide assets. For non-UK domiciled individuals, your UK inheritance tax is payable on assets situated in the UK. The first £325,000 of your assets or your estate for individuals is exempt, so it would only be the balance over that would be liable to inheritance tax in the UK.
Thank you, Mark. That's really detailed. So we know that there are different tax rules for different taxes. So as you know, a lot of Hong Kong buyers are planning to move to the UK. And a lot of them are still uncertain about their situation, what the situation is going to be. So what if some buyers live in the UK for some days, whereas some days they live in Hong Kong or elsewhere globally? What rate of tax do they need to pay? And is there a limit on the days that they have to be in the UK?
Okay, so generally, if you're in the UK long enough in the tax year that you are classed as UK tax resident for the year, then you're going to be liable to income tax and capital gains tax on your worldwide income and gains. So your residency status, as I've mentioned before, is determined using the statutory residency test, which, as I said, is quite complex, but it essentially looks at how many days you have been in the UK during the tax year. If you're in the UK for more than 183 days in a tax year, then you'll be UK resident, basically, as a general rule. If you're in the UK for less than this, then it would depend on your residency status in the previous 3 tax years as to how many days you'll have to have been in the UK to be classed as UK resident. This is something we generally review for clients when we engage them to make sure their situation is known from the offset. But if you are liable to income tax in the UK, it'll be at 20% for the first 37,700 of taxable income, 40% for the next 112,300, and then 45% for anything over that.
Thanks, Mark. We have a brief understanding of how the limit. So let me give you a few examples or situations in more detail, so you can maybe give some advice on these certain situations. So the first one would be, if I live in the UK but have investment properties in Hong Kong, is the income from my Hong Kong investment property be subject to UK tax?
So, yes. If you are classed as UK resident, which generally, as I said, if you live in the UK for 183 days or more in a tax year, you'll be then liable to income tax on your worldwide income. So that would mean any income from your Hong Kong properties that you rent out would be liable to UK tax.
Thank you. Let's move on to situation 2. So if I live in the UK and sell my property in Hong Kong, will I be taxed in the UK for that Hong Kong property that I sold?
So yeah, as with income, your tax residency would be determined using the statutory residency test, which if you're living in the UK permanently, then you'll likely be caught by these rules, and therefore you'll be chargeable to capital gains tax in the UK on your worldwide assets. So selling a property in Hong Kong while you're UK tax residents would see you liable to capital gains tax accordingly.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, the next question will be about inheritance tax. But as you know, the Hong Kong inheritance tax and the UK inheritance tax, they've got quite a significant difference in their rate. So a lot of clients are really concerned about UK inheritance tax. So the third scenario would be, if I live in the UK before my death, but have properties in Hong Kong, will those Hong Kong properties be also subject to UK inheritance tax?
So yeah, as I said, inheritance tax is not under the same residency rules as in income tax and capital gains tax. It's the domicile status of the individual that's important here. And domicile is fairly complex and a unique sort of subject for UK tax. And determining an individual's domicile is not defined by legislation. It's dealt with under common law. Generally, there are 4 types of domicile: domicile of origin, domicile of dependence, domicile of choice, and deemed domicile. I won't go through all of those now because it does get very complex, but where an individual has been resident in the UK for the 15 of the last 20 tax years, they will be deemed UK domicile. So identifying a domicile is generally done on a case-by-case scenario, but if you are UK domicile under any of the 4 different types, you'll be liable to inheritance tax on your worldwide estate. If you're not UK domicile, then you'll only be liable to inheritance tax on assets situated in the UK. So in those cases, Hong Kong properties wouldn't then be liable, providing you have not become UK domicile.
Thank you, Mark. We have discussed some quite complex situations. So the last question will be quite simple. The last question will be, if a buyer have decided to move to the UK, and they're going to buy a property in the UK as their main residence. So the question they want to know is, so are there any tax involved after completion if the buyer is buying a property as his main residence?
Okay, yeah, so the main tax to consider when buying a property in the UK as your main residence will be stamp duty land tax. And there's a surcharge for non-residents for stamp duty land tax. And if that's not met at the point the purchase is made, we can reclaim the surcharge if you become UK resident within a year of purchasing the property. So furthermore, there are other stamp duty land tax reliefs to consider. For example, if you purchase a property with a separate annex, you can claim multiple dwellings relief, but these are all things that we can look into for you to see if they're appropriate. If the property is going to be your own home, there should be no other direct taxes to consider. However, if you later purchase another property as your main home and rent out your previous home, income tax will become applicable on the income you receive from that. And when you sell the property, if it's not being used as your main home the whole time you've owned it, it could become liable to capital gains tax. If it's been your own home the whole time you've owned it, there shouldn't be any capital gains tax. But these are things you can review on a case-by-case sort of basis with clients and everything. So that's pretty much covers it, I think.
Yeah, thank you for your answers, Mark. I think this is quite a detailed video about estate planning in the UK. So thank you very much for that. 咁我相信咧，今日我哋嘅分享咧都解答到好多大家關於 estate planning 嘅問題啦。咁希望你哋如果係consider 係移居英國嘅話咧，其實你哋都可以清楚知道其實有啲咩稅項需要注意。咁咧，其實除咗我喺嘅property department 啦，其實我哋咧中倫律師事務所咧，亦都有 private client 嘅 department 嘅，係可以幫你哋 set up 個 will 啦，同埋做 probate 嘅事項嘅。所以如果有啲咩需要，可以隨時聯絡我哋。多謝大家 ，thank you。
好啦，今日同大家嘅分享就結束啦。咁如果有任何問題，歡迎大家隨時聯絡我哋。拜拜。